Welcome, it's Wednesday, and with that comes the YieldMax Group 2 distributions, their initial Group 2 distribution announcement, I guess. They took all their weekly single stock covered call ETFs and put them into a Group 2 weekly payout distribution. So Group 1 was yesterday. That was the YMAXs, the YMAGs, Ultis, basically their fund of funds. Whereas today we got the single stocks. Here's the announcement. Overall, I guess the first thing, I was looking at X, and a lot of people are confused. This is the key right here. Group 2 funds declared on October 15, 2025 were calculated by a prorated investment activity over the relevant weeks. So basically, Group 3 is like normal when you're expecting the monthly payouts because it includes like a monthly payout. It includes 4 weeks of activity. Group B, which was reported last week, it reported its monthly dividend, went to weekly. So this week is only 1 week. Group A is 2 weeks. Group D is 3 weeks. Group C is 4 weeks. Next week, of course, all these will be based on the previous week's investment activity. But just to point that out, this is not like an apples comparison. I guess overall you can compare the previous Group B to Group B, and you can compare the previous Group C to Group C stocks or ETFs. But don't compare these on a like-to-like comparison. What do I mean by that? So if we look at NVIDIA, that paid last week. You can see this week, the weekly distribution was only like 11 cents roughly. And that's because it just paid. Whereas you look at one of these, I think Hui was a good one. Hui paid almost $6, $5.94. That is not weekly though. That was the monthly payout. Next payout will be like a like-to-like weekly comparison. So next week we'll be able to compare all these and assess them from a comparison perspective, at least what they're paying out on distribution wise. This week is chaotic. Yeah, you can't really compare anything unless you can compare stuff from group to group, but that's about it. Hopefully that makes sense. But overall, looking at these, I see I've got a couple newer ones. We got Circle in here, and that was $2.48. We also got Hims and Hers. Where was that one at? HIYY, that was $2.06. So those are both pretty good for newer ETFs. I guess jumping out of me right away, I don't really see too much. I know Hui was quite large. Yeah, it's so hard because you don't know what these are not on a monthly basis. You almost got to go back here and remember the previous group that they were in and compare that to get an assessment of how they're doing time to time. But overall, yeah, I just wanted to note that there was some confusion, so I wanted to make that clear. I did put these into a spreadsheet. Of course, this won't be utilized best, or it'll be utilized best next week. So I got all the single stock ETFs. I do add, I think, Circle and Hims and Hers to it. But if we did filter based on percent return, you can see a lot of the ones at the top, of course, are the previous Group C ones, because what I'm doing is taking the distribution divided by the recent price. So like Hui, for example, I noted that almost $6 dividend divided by the 72 price gives you a 8% or 8.1, almost 8.2% return for the month via the distribution. But the top one was AMDY. That one, it's only traded at $9.88 and paid almost 9.95 cent distribution. So that was 9.62%. Coney was just over 5%. And as I noted, a lot of these were previous Group C ones, because here toward the bottom, like you got NVDY, which is usually decent, but that one looks like it's only 0.7%. That is for the week, 0.7% for the week, whereas the ones up here is like 9.2% for the month. And then some of the other ones that are like Group A and Group D. I will know like Misty though, that was 61 cents, I believe. If I go back to just want to make sure, Misty was about 61 cents. So that's Group D. So that only includes three weeks of data or options activity. Misty's all the way down in the high 12 range based on the kind of decline in Bitcoin lately. But as a percent, that's 4.72% for 3 weeks. So that's not too bad. If you see any of the non-Group C ones make their way up to the top of the chart here, that means they're doing pretty well overall. But yeah, overall next week, it'll be interesting to see how they stack up against one another when they're all reported on a weekly basis. I assume the top ones will probably be pretty similar. Of course, a lot of the high implied volatility names. But that's a look at your first distributions. But for the Group 1, Group 2 weekly payout method employed by YieldMax. Also, just to touch base on the market caps. So we do got Misty at 3.8 billion. What was it at one point? Like 5.5, I think. So that one's definitely taking a tumble. Ulti's almost catching it, 3.4. So Ulti coming up behind Misty for sure. And then we got NVDY here, of course. That's the second largest single stock ETF. And then Tesla and Coney. Looks like Coney's third, Tesla's fourth. And then, of course, you got your YMAG. YMAX about over 2 times the size of YMAG, for those that are curious. And, of course, Palantir here, it's almost 650 million. But these are all your market cap ETFs that YieldMax employs that are over 100 million in market cap. So these are the ones where YieldMax is making their money on. Some of their newer entrants that are under 100 million. Murney, I guess, was over 100 million. It's fallen recently, so now it's in the bottom chart. But here we go. These still surprise me. Hims and Hers only got 1.1 million. I know it's a new one. GameStop, 1.2 million. Seems like not enough money to even make a fund, but those are very small. Maybe they will grow with time. They got the Renty here at 2.4 million. Soxy, 7.2 million. Some of the ones I like down here, of course, are Snowy. It'd be nice to see that one. I think that one will probably get up into the upper echelon, over 100 million market cap here shortly. Yeah, there's OARK, of course. AIYY, that one has not done very well. I'm surprised that market cap is even where it is at. And then, yeah, anyway, you can come, I'll put the link in the YouTube description if you want to come and look at these. But there's an update for your group 2. And of course, as always, if we go to Hood, for example, I do got the single stock kind of analysis here. And you can see it does take into account this latest distribution date, or just about $6 a share. And that does add to your total return. So you can see Hui starting off with 50. We're already well over 100. So that's been a great investment. That said, the underlying equity, of course, has been the best option by far. But diving deep into Hui, just a reminder that this stuff's out here and it's fun to take a look, I think. Well, for the options expiring 10/17, we got Hui right now at about 135, basically right where this black line is. The synthetic right now is at 145. So the stock is below the synthetic. Therefore, the synthetic's a negative value on the fund. But we got calls sold at 149 up through 153. Then we got some calls bought 158 through 163. So of course, on a per makeup, you do got some negative value, negative $1.71 in the synthetic value. And the other contracts, the weekly contracts they sell, are currently a negative 41 cent drag on the fund. So the ETF price is slightly less than their cash price. They are employing credit spreads via 100%. And just to touch base on the fund's growth over time, it's actually been somewhat stable. That's at about 250 million. Just want to make sure that lines up with what my charts say down here. So Hui is at 250 million. So I got to find it here. There it is. So there's Hui, 233 million, just under 250 million. I was actually somewhat surprised by that. I expect Hui to be a little bit bigger. It's been such a vastly outperforming fund. I'm surprised more people aren't piling into it relative to the Misty's, Nvidia's, even Coinbase. I know these ones have been around longer. But yeah, anyway, I guess that kind of expect that one to be a little bit higher in terms of overall market cap. But the market cap on Hui, yeah, it's actually been quite stable since about July, late July. It's been right around between 200 and 250 million. And as far as how the components have been trending over time, of course, we'll just look at kind of the last little bit here. Clearly on Hui, what you see here is around early October, Hood share price rocketed up. You can see that synthetic value got all the way up to almost $23 a share. Sorry about that. So what they did, that you can see, is they cashed out that synthetic. Their cash was at $55.90 per share. They cashed it out, and their cash is all up to almost $76.45 a share. Not sure how those keep coming. So they cashed that out, and then since then, their synthetic's actually down a bit, but they cashed it down to about zero. So Hui's been up and down and is currently sitting at a slight negative value. But yeah, anyway, there's a quick update. The group 2, track these next week, try to get an apples comparison. Thanks.